Well, we are so happy to be chatting with you today about how Phenom has built its products around the employee experience and the talent management space based on the internal challenges and opportunities that we see from talent management at Phenom. My name is Laura Kantorovich. I am the product director for employee experience and talent management at Phenom.
Hi, all. I'm Christine Kenzie, the Senior Director of Global Organizational Effectiveness here, so on the HR side. Nice to have everybody here. We're going to start, as Laura said. So as you may have seen in many of the presentations, the purpose that we have at Phenom is really important to us. We're here to help 1 billion people find the right job. And helping people find the right job can, it's something we do with all of you as you help people find jobs in your organizations, and it's something we do internally, right? We want our people to be able to be successful and find a good fit. And we want to make sure that we can use technology to do that, to help you and to help our folks. And we start within our own organization. So just a little bit about us. We are quite large, if you didn't know. So we span the globe. We have 6 offices across 3 different continents, but we have just around 1,500 employees that are across 4 different continents, did the math this morning, and serve over 500 customers globally. So it's quite a large organization with lots of different roles, lots of different needs, folks at different levels, right? Interns and early career talent, all the way up to folks who've been with Phenom for most of their careers. And we know that there's a lot of challenges that come with supporting the development of folks at all those levels across all of our different offices. We have 4 of them listed here that we're going to focus on for this presentation today. So the first is that we really want to make sure that our employees know what they're looking for and what their path can be, right? What do they want? How do we ensure that they have visibility to that? And how do we do that at scale, right? Challenge number 2, time is of the essence for most of us these days. How do we ensure that once our folks know what they want, that they can get to that, they can find the right skills development, they can find the right training at scale without always having to come to a single central resource in HR to do that? And then, I'm a former educator, so feedback, very important. Proof is in the pudding, as they say. So how do we ensure that there are good feedback mechanisms and loops for those folks as they're learning? How do they know that they're developing the skills to the level that they're looking for, that they get feedback and coaching and support from peers, from mentors, from leaders at all levels of the business? And then also very important, something I spoke about yesterday during a training session, how do you shift the culture, the mindset, the behaviors of an organization? The transformation and the change that sometimes accompanies this type of approach to developing talent can be a challenge for HR organizations within their companies. So we looked at these challenges, and we've built technology to help solve for those. And Laura's going to talk to you about some of that.
Awesome. And actually, before we go to the next slide, let's just go back really quickly. I'm curious, so what's been so exciting about partnering with Christine, if you go back to the challenges slide, what's been so exciting about partnering is hearing all of the challenges that we're seeing internally, because they mimic the challenges that, perfect, thank you. They mimic the challenges that we're hearing from our partners and our clients as well. And so from a show of hands, I'm curious, because I want to make this an interactive conversation. I know a lot of you have been sitting here. How do these challenges resonate? Raise your hand if they resonate. Awesome. If there is not a challenge that is listed here on this board, can you just scream it out? Just scream it. And if no, I'll be shocked. Okay, I'm shocked. No. All right, so obviously these challenges resonate very largely. And so if you go to the next few slides, I'm going to talk you through kind of our point of view, which is really an amalgamation of all of the challenges that we've heard from Christine, that we've seen internally in our organization, that I've seen personally as I'm trying to develop my employees and the folks on my team, and what we've heard from our talent management teams as well. And so if you go to the next slide, the main thing that we're hearing is it's important to change the narrative from your organization drives your career to you yourself as an employee drives your career. That's kind of the number 1 priority that we're hearing time and time again, and that we think will help kind of pivot this conversation. The next is from an organizational perspective, how do you adapt a skills-first approach to help drive and foster development and growth? Not necessarily only thinking about expertise or career frameworks or role frameworks, but how do you actually understand what the skills are within your organization, within every single individual, and not just your tactical skills, but also your behavioral skills, your personality skills, and how do you start to embed that into that sort of development? And then finally, how do you understand your employee aspirations and help them realize their potential? So if you think about that previous slide around skills, that's almost that quantitative data. How do you take the qualitative, understand each individual person, what their goals and aspirations are, and start to match those together so you can truly start enabling people to allow themselves to drive their careers? And so here's really what we've identified, right? For those kind of three main priorities, here's kind of a high-level overview of all the different elements you need to really enable that career development from an individual perspective. And we're going to talk about some of these solutions. If you go to the next slide, what we've really identified is talent management needs a platform that delivers a holistic approach to career development. When I have been building this over the last few years, what we've really been thinking about is how do you not only build a platform that supports the employee, but also that supports the hiring or the people manager as well as the talent manager, and building this sort of triad relationship where there's as much information around how and communication around how you can enable people to set their own careers, focus on development and learning to achieve those goals. And then, as Christine was saying, getting that feedback, so the proof is in the pudding, so that feedback is constantly being obtained, regenerated, and level set into how skills are developed over time. So that's really what we've started building, right? This is the triad that I was just talking about. This is a slide that we come back to time and time again because we really think that this is kind of like the perfect triangle, the perfect pyramid, right? This is the relationship where we really need to make sure that there is data, transparency, communication, proactive support on a regular basis, and everybody needs to be on the same page for career growth to actually function. And so what I'm going to show you in a bit are all of the different elements and solutions that a number of our clients have that are leveraging these solutions from an employee, talent manager, and manager perspective, and how we're kind of solving the problem through that. But I do want to, before I go into that, talk about how that all works, right? So in order for that triad to really work, there needs to be data. And there needs to be data that is constantly growing, that is using people feedback, that is using machine learning to make sure that it's relevant and consistent across all of these different personas that I just talked about. So this is how the Phenom data, this is how our data at Phenom works. We have a foundational layer. It's completely out of the box. We've been aggregating data over the past 12 years across the talent acquisition and the talent management space, matching skills to roles, skills to career architectures, that matches things from a talent acquisition and a talent management side. And we've been aggregating that, and we have now over 12 billion data points that we have been collecting from all the different clients that we have. But we know that data and that market data is not the only thing that's necessary. We need the also contextual layer of your organization. Every organization is different. Every organization has different competencies. Every organization has different rules, requirements, regulations, policies that we need to take into account to make sure that context layer is also built into the data itself. Then also human in the loop feedback. At the end of the day, an experience or an automation is just that. It makes our lives easier, but people are really at the center of everything. People need to be providing feedback on a regular basis about what works, what doesn't work, whether the data is correct, whether it's not correct, whether things were useful or not useful. And so this human in the loop feedback layer is the most important part, in my opinion, to our data because we are constantly learning. And our AI, which sits on the top of all of that, is constantly learning from all of that information. And so this data is what's being consistently shared across that triad, across that triangle, making sure that our employees, our talent managers, and our managers have as much personalized information as possible to help their employees develop their own career. So if you go to the next slide, what's really interesting as we've been talking to a number of our different clients is there's a really interesting maturity map that we're seeing. If you go to the next slide. A number of different organizations really want to aspire to be at this sort of talent intelligence and automation layer to really execute on this triad where you're using intelligence on a regular basis to enable personalization and proactivity across the employee, across the talent manager, and across the manager. But in reality, the majority of organizations still are kind of at this core and evolution stage where it takes a little bit of more time. They are still working on learning and development and focused on performance. They kind of have leadership training down. And then about 15% are starting to think about succession planning, are starting to think about career frameworks. And then really only a small percentage, that 5%, has really achieved this sort of innovation space. And as Christine said, that's because we know that it takes a lot of time and effort from a policy perspective and a change management perspective to get there. So I'll talk a little bit about how we solve for that. So that's kind of our point of view. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the ways that we're solving that. You're going to see a lot of this, if you haven't already, at some of the different sessions where we're talking about talent management. And tomorrow during our keynote, we're going to be showing even more. But today I wanted to highlight some solutions that we've built specifically for these challenges. So the first is around, the first challenge was to enable employees to know what they want and ensure they know how to get there, right? So first and foremost, it's up to your employee to tell you and their manager, their talent managers, what is my goal? Okay, so you have what you need. I have identified what my career path is. Now what? Mm-hmm. Luckily, a lot of different organizations have a learning and development course. They may also have a project or a gigs program in their organization. How do you connect all of the data that you have about an individual, about their career path, to these learning and development courses, to these gigs? How do you make all of this automated? Skills, the buzzword of 2022/3, and let's see for how much longer. So skills are obviously incredibly important, right? This feedback loop. We need to understand who people are so we can provide this personal feedback on the courses that they've taken, on the learnings that they have, on the engagement that they have with different individuals. And so here's how we've built a solution for that at Phenom. So we just talked about, just to kind of cover these three areas again, right? The challenge number one, it was all about making sure somebody was able to communicate what they wanted. How we solved that was building an automated career path for them. An employee can choose what the career path and career options that they want. We auto-generate that for you to make it a little bit easier, but from a talent management perspective, you have the ability to kind of change and configure that as you need. The second challenge we talked about was upskilling. Okay, so if you have a certain career or job that you want to take, how do you actually then solve those problems? Or how do you upskill, rather? We have learning integrations, we have gigs and projects as a way to kind of help support that upskilling. In addition to that, we have full best practices and onboarding materials as well. Number three was that skill assessment and manager feedback, that constant feedback in the loop or person in the loop. So you saw that skill validation. Tomorrow you will see how HR is able to give feedback and work with individuals as well as managers. So really excited for you to see that. And unfortunately, I'm leaving you guys with a bit of a teaser because this is the final challenge and final solution here, which is how do we actually shift organizational mindset, policies, and practices. And what we're going to be showing you tomorrow is this sort of talent management experience. And included in that is the ERM, just similar to the CRM, but for employees. It's our employee relationship management tool, where you are able to identify employees based on the skills that they have, the tenure that they have, any different proactive information that's brought up into your platform, and engage with them via SMS and email. So really excited to share that with all of you. So those are the kind of main challenges. I wanted to make sure, I think we have about 7 minutes left. Wanted to make sure that we had a conversation or ended with a conversation here today. Happy to go back to any of the demos if you guys have any questions. But let's start off. If maybe we can bring a microphone up.
I was going to come up on stage.
Oh, come on up. Do it. Let's go. You have a booming voice, it sounds like.
So I was curious, you talk about the career paths, and a lot of times we're not sure what career path we wanted to take. And I'm curious if there's a tool to optimize, like if I wanted to do DEI, HR, or talent acquisition, what are some of the uniform skills that I can, skills courses I could take, the uniform mentors maybe that I could talk to, that sort of stuff to sort of optimize as I make the decision.
Kind of an aggregation of all of those different paths. That's
Exactly.
an awesome idea. So right now, and maybe we can just, so sorry guys to make you switch back again, but if you can go back to the demo slide, you can see here, they'll pull it up in a sec, you can see here that all of those options are there, right? And as you look into all of these options, you can start seeing, well, I can't scroll back, but you can start seeing kind of who are the people in each of these roles, what are the skills in each of these roles, and start doing that kind of in-depth analysis on your own as an individual. I love what you're saying in terms of kind of having that aggregation and choosing the multiple career paths and kind of moving that way. So I think that's awesome. What I will say is that's the first time I've heard that question, so I love that. And for those of you that are Phenom customers, you may know that when we have ideas, we are constantly trying to kind of embed them into the product. It was actually one of our clients that told us they wanted to have that peer and manager assessment. We were able to turn that around quickly. So not something that we have yet. Thank you very much for sharing that. What was your name? Cliff. What company are you from?
NBC University.
Awesome. We were old colleagues, Cliff, believe it or not.
If I
I love that
chime
idea,
in
so thank you
too.
so much.
Well, I also love what you're saying just from a practitioner perspective. One of the things that I know that Laura showed, but may have just been shown quickly, is what I love is that as an employee, if I know that there's a handful of skills I want to develop, you can search our mentors by skills. You can go to the Connect app and search peers across the entire organization by skills, and you can multi-select some of those skills. You can look at them by the departments they're in, the jobs they have, and so as an employee, I'm no longer wondering, who does the thing I want to do, right? How many of us have had employees come to us and say, I don't know where to start. I'd love to do this, and they're asking their manager. The manager doesn't know. They go to their peers, right? It can become exhausting for employees, and sometimes they just don't go looking. Having a holistic platform where all of it is just surfaced up to me, and if I change my mind, I can pick a different path. I may not have thought that as an associate product manager that marketing was a path I could take, but because we have that data, because we know that that's a journey others have done, or that your data shows it's a journey that others have taken, we can now surface that up, which exposes people to so much more than they've ever had before.
So stay on career pathing for a second.
Sure.
Thinking about skills of the future, career frameworks, ontology, taxonomy, all these wonderful things. If you're a skill-based organization on one of the paths, it had a 50% education component. So how do you strip that out and layer in assessments, for example?
Yeah, so it's like I mentioned, different organizations have different kind of hierarchy of roles or preferences. Once you've purchased Phenom, we go through a large implementation process where we're basically asking you, what are your specific preferences? We certainly have out-of-the-box solutions that enable you to just turn things on if you want, but we know that larger organizations and smaller ones have specific kind of specific rules. So we can toggle those back and forth and make sure those hierarchies are there to kind of fit the specific needs of each organization. Does that answer your question? Okay, great.
My question is actually similar. You put in there earlier in the profile, I can mark off my own skills, right? I'm great at presentation skills, right? And then I can get feedback from my manager. Sort of a two-parter. If I say I'm great and my manager says, nope, sorry dude, you suck. Or conversely, if I say I'm great and my manager says, yes, I think you're great, but it turns out I'm not, right? How are you validating skills, right? How are you ensuring that the people that are saying, yes, I'm good at X, are actually good at X?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer from the technology side, and then I'll let you answer from kind of the program and process side. So from a technical perspective, we are finding the baseline. So we are doing an average of all of those, but most importantly, what happens is if I rate myself as 10, my manager rates myself as 8, there's a proactive notification that says a conversation needs to happen. And that's really the most important thing, right? It's less about the number that gets popped up, and it's more about, so how do we kind of find this common ground?
Yeah, and I'm going to tease the keynote tomorrow too in this. So when you see the manager view of this, that's really where it's going to come back to it, right? I'm a former educator. To me, it's all about all of the different inputs, right? The learning courses that they've taken, that I can see that they've taken, that helps with maybe a gig, a stretch assignment, or a project elsewhere in the organization that they did with another member of the organization to help demonstrate the skills that they just learned in that course. The mentor conversations that I don't know what they're talking about, but I may know that they have mentors, and I can ask them, how are things going? You know, in my one-on-one, I can ask those thoughtful questions. As a manager, I'm being served up some of those insights that help me to know what types of things to talk about and ask about in those career development conversations.
Awesome.
Hey, so this also is a two-part question a little bit. So just the inputs for this view on the career path, is that coming from company movement in terms of individual at an associate product manager role, moving to product manager, marketing manager, business analyst, et cetera? Or is it coming just from your data that you've all collected, or a series of both? And then second would be, if they are to add skills from gig work or stretch assignments that is being captured in the portal on the other end, would this change? So if somebody had a marketing assignment, would that marketing manager match become higher?
Awesome. I'm going to answer your last question first because it's fresh in my mind. And while I do that, if I can actually ask to switch back to the PowerPoint view, and if you can go back to that Phenom view. So yes, your last question was basically, if I could summarize or kind of get to the root of it, how well does the platform, how well is that data in real time being updated in the platform, both from the employee to the manager to the hiring manager? It's all real time. So that's one of the things that Christine had shared with us, right? This needs to be a holistic platform where this information is constantly flowing. It's not in one different system that needs to be updated from another Excel file that needs to be updated somewhere else. It's all updating. So once a skill has been updated or has been completed, it has been reviewed with the employee and the manager, and the employee has added it, that's gone ahead and been updated, right? It's going to reflect in the employee profile. You'll even see tomorrow again in the keynote that it's being reflected in the hiring manager or the people manager experience and the talent manager experience. So that's the question, or the answer to that question. I believe the first question you asked me, but please clarify if I didn't get it correctly, is how are we getting this data? Is this just out of the box data? Is it specific to the organization? And frankly, this is where a lot of, I feel like we sense a lot of trepidation when talking to our partners, because they communicate that this is an exercise that has been done before. It's gone absolutely nowhere. It's a pain in the ass to get to your managers. They don't know what to do with it. I'm sure I see a lot of nods. You all have felt this pain. So I'm going to talk you a little bit through that. And again, this is also where that change management comes into place. I asked to show this screen again because, again, this is how our data is represented. We have 12 years of experience where we've been aggregating data over time across the full talent lifecycle, talent acquisition, and talent management. That means we've been looking at job descriptions, getting feedback from recruiters, getting feedback from talent managers about skills and jobs, and we've been kind of building that into our own kind of proprietary data system. On top of that, we have your business's information. So as again, if you were to start using this tool during kind of our implementation process, you give us some of these requirements. We share with you what this kind of skill architecture looks like or what these career frameworks look like. You give us feedback as to whether or not this is right for you or not. And then on top of that, again, it's the information that we've received from recruiters, from talent managers about whether or not the recommendations of the career architecture are accurate or not, whether these progressions, are accurate. And then on top of that, it's the AI, so it's constantly learning. So I'm saying that to underscore that we hear that a lot. When we talk about skill ontologies and when we talk about career architecture, that's constantly the question that's brought up, and I'm very passionate about it because it's important to kind of make sure that everybody's on the same page. So hopefully that kind of answered your question, but happy to continue talking about that.
And I know we are at
I was going to say, I think
We're
we're at
slightly
time
over.
here.
Yeah.
But we will be here to answer any questions. Thank you all so much for your engagement. We're going to be covering a lot of this tomorrow during the keynote. So
Definitely.
excited to chat with you then. Thank you.
Thank you.